Belarus will hold presidential elections on December 19th. The outcome of the elections is likely to give the victory to the incumbent, President Aleksandr Lukashenko, but in a strategic sense, it doesn't really matter who wins. What the election does do is give Stratfor an opportunity to examine the state of relations between Belarus, Russia, and the West. Belarus is important for several reasons, not least of which is geography. Belarus is located on the northern European plain, which is the traditional invasion route, historically, from Western European powers into Russia. For Russia, therefore, Belarus serves as an important defense partner who, if allied with Russia, can serve as a bulwark against any sort of Western or, in modern-day, NATO expansion into Russia's periphery. Belarus is also important to Russia for an economic reason. Because of its location, it serves as a transit point for 20%, roughly, of Russia's energy supplies that go to Europe. Because Belarus is a nearby European state, the European Union, and especially the Central Europeans, countries like Poland, have an important stake in Belarus as well. This can be for economic ties, but also, and more importantly, as a buffer against Russian designs in the region as well. In the past year, we have seen many interesting developments happen in Belarus as these two players, Russia and Europe, vie for influence there. Russia started 2010 by joining into a customs union with Belarus along with Kazakhstan, which essentially eliminates many economic and political barriers between the three countries. While this was meant to strengthen Russia's relationship with Belarus, it actually opened many rifts with Belarus instead. This happened because the two countries, Russia and Belarus, joined into the customs union for different reasons. From Belarus's perspective, they thought that being in a customs union with Russia would grant it favor with Moscow and give it perks and concessions from Russia, such as cheaper energy prices for natural gas and oil, or the abolition of customs duties on the oil and natural gas that Belarus transits onto Europe. But from Russia's perspective, they weren't willing to give such concessions to Belarus because Russia essentially thought of the customs union as a way to dominate Belarus along with Kazakhstan economically, and they weren't willing to play such games with Minsk. These two different perspectives actually resulted in serious rifts between the two countries. Lukashenko publicly attacked Russia's leadership, and Russia responded by cutting off natural gas exports to Belarus, and this caused Belarus to seek energy diversification away from Russia, and Minsk signed oil deals with Venezuela. But these tensions that we saw between Belarus and Russia were not so much a true rupture, but rather Belarus trying to get bargaining chips in order to get a better deal with Russia. And we actually saw such a deal take place last week when both countries agreed on their customs union spats, and Russia did give in slightly to Belarus's demands, although not completely, on the energy export tariffs. It's also worth noting that throughout all of these rifts that we saw in this past year, in 2010, the security relationship between the two countries only strengthened. There were never any sort of rifts. Belarus never talked about joining NATO, and the two countries signed multiple deals, whether it's through the CSTO or through bilateral military agreements. Fundamentally, Belarus is truly integrated into Russia from an economic standpoint, but even more so from a military standpoint. And this is something that the elections that we're going to see this weekend will not change.